going on? This is Coach Nickens. We're here at Harley M Photography Studios for the annual Black History Month project, and today I'm here with Jackie. Mm-hmm. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
We're glad that you were able to come by. I know you have a pretty busy schedule with all that's going on. Yeah. But yeah, let's jump right into it. So tell us about your nationality.
I am Haitian American, born in the U.S., but definitely connected to my culture. So
Nice. You know what's funny? I tease a lot of folks that admit that they're Haitian Americans because like a lot of them like aren't super into the language.
Yeah.
And like I'm like,
don't judge me.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was not born. My first language is Creole.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I lost it.
No, well,
a little bit.
I'm pretty sure I've heard you speak it, so I'm sure you still understand a bit. Like I have like nieces and nephews, and like a lot of friends of mine that were born here, like they can understand the language, but like it's like having a conversation in it, it's like over their head. But
it's tough. I mean, we try.
Yeah, it's a tough language, but like any other language, like I know when I was born in Haiti, mm-hmm. So French was my first language, and Haitian Creole was the second language, and then when I came here, English had to become the first language. So
right.
Found no one to really speak French with, so like now it's gone, and I still kind of understand it, but like I know exactly what you're coming from.
It was French and Creole for me. And then, you go to school and then it's like everyone wants you to speak English now. So, but They also expect you to like retain everything else. It's not possible.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, the only way it's possible is if like you've got someone you consistently like talk that language with.
Yeah.
So you kind of have like two different cultures coming from like the Haitian side and also the American side.
Right.
What are your favorite parts about both of them?
So with being Haitian, it's the culture, right? Like the Haitian culture is such a rich culture, and there's so much to gain from it. Like just being part of it, like just the resiliency of our people, and that's something that I hold on to. I feel like American culture, don't hate me out, just doesn't have the same resiliency. Yep. And so with being American, there's also this piece about, there's certain things that you enjoy, certain freedoms you enjoy. Yeah. And like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like it's something that, I as a person am grateful for. So I identify with both, but I am more in love with my Haitian culture, and will always be.
Yeah, of course. So I know exactly what you mean coming from Haiti and seeing both sides of it. Like there's definitely a different layer of freedom that you have living in a country that's considered a superpower.
Right.
And like there's a lot of other opportunities you get that you otherwise wouldn't get coming from Haiti.
Yeah. And
like you know what they always say, like you got to be grateful to be here because there's so much going on back home. And I tell folks all the time, I'm like, you can appreciate both. Like that's all you can do at some point, because there's a lot going back home, but we have little to no control over it, the same way we have little to no control over what happens here.
Right. I feel like being here gives me the opportunity to grow in ways that I need to help people in Haiti, right? Like help our culture flourish and help people learn more about who we are. And so I really value that. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So from what I understand, you're an educator.
Yes.
Okay, and how long have you been in teaching?
So I've been teaching for 8 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
You don't look as stressed as most people that have been teaching for like 5 years.
Well, I mean, like I love the profession.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've learned throughout the years is not to allow my profession to dictate my life and how I choose to move through life.
Gotcha.
So I don't allow it to become too much of a stressor for me. So self-care is a big thing, and that's how I feel like I can survive in this profession.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree. Because I remember when I was in school, whether it was middle school, high school, even elementary, like some of my teachers, there were some that kind of had a similar mindset. Like they were really very relaxed, like well composed. And then you had the ones that came in, they come in, they put their briefcase on the table, they sit down, they huffing and puffing. You raise your hand, they call on you, you make a noise, get out, go see the principal. So
I prioritize self-care, and not just for me, but my students. So you walk into my classroom and it's a very mellow atmosphere. I have like chill hot playing in the background, like essential oils.
Humidifier.
I'm like my plants and all of that. So it's good for the kids. It's good for me. So.
Yeah, and I wish we had that back then too when I was growing up, because it was like, as you probably know, it was just a room with chairs, tables, and dusty books.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, for real.
Yeah. So what grade have you been teaching the last 8 years?
So I've taught 5th, 1st, 4th, and now 3rd.
Okay. Tell me about that, because you're jumping around between different years. Because I know it's all elementary, but it's different stages of like personality development for the most part.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been like?
It's interesting because it's like, I feel like it makes me a more well-rounded teacher to see like kids at different stages of their life.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like I'm understanding of where they are developmentally. I have to say, like, I loved teaching 1st grade, and I know a lot of people don't typically say that because they're very needy, but like, it's just like they're innocent. They're incredibly innocent, and like you can just see how like that innocence like changes. Like, not that they're
fades
not,
away.
right?
Fades away. I think
it's a shift and a change that happens.
Yeah.
And I just think it's interesting just to like be able to study the way a child develops. So, yeah, it definitely helps.
It's because like, as somebody who's kind of been through like all 12 grades, so to say, like you could kind of like remember like when I walked in the 1st grade versus when I walked in the 12th grade, completely different person. Every single year, it's like you're changing. It's more pressure. You're closer to adulthood than adolescence. So you just become like, I'd say like harder in a sense.
Some kids, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, some people they keep the innocence. They keep their that inner child, but like I know when I was in high school, a lot of people lost that by like middle school. But it depends. It depends what school you go to.
It depends on your school, your environment. So like I've worked in like very affluent environments, and I've worked in environments where the kids are like on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
And you'll see that like different people have different ways of surviving in the world, right? Like, so for some of my kids who came from like harder situations, they had to be harder sometimes.
Yeah.
To survive, to be able to just function in their environments. And it's not everybody, but being in this profession, I feel like gives me an outlook on like people in general and how people function. So even as adults, like I can kind of like look at an adult and kind of have an idea of what you were probably like as a child.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's all about like understanding humans.
It is. It's a projection, because I've personally kind of seen it too, like with like my nieces and nephews, and like their circle of friends, like the ones from affluent neighborhoods versus the ones from like the projects. They have a different outlook, and growing up, we had friends that were from the suburbs, friends that were from the projects, and it's the maturity level is different. The financial intelligence is different, and just the overall perspective of life and what life is different. Right. And it's nice. It's like when you go to like college, you kind of see like this melting pot of both, in a sense, and like you kind of see this clash, and like so the suburb kids are trying to learn game from the kids that are from the hood kids are trying to learn game from the kids that are from the suburbs, and like I think it's super cool to see it. But like you said, when people get into their adulthood, you could kind of see what they were like as a kid and what they went through, and without even like without even like being that close to them. You just all it takes is a conversation to be like, okay, wow. Yeah. And then they tell you what school they went to, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like I also feel like I'm able to see the strengths in both, right? Like so working in an affluent community, obviously there are benefits to like the wealth, right? Like what you're able to afford to be able to do, and you can get a tutor to teach you certain things and all that. But then like to work with children who like they have to, in some cases, rely on like street smarts or different things. Like those are such valuable skills that I don't think society really understands. No. And so for me, it's like, I feel like I'm able to kind of bridge the gap for students to help understand that like, you may have money and be able to access certain things, but this is a person who can teach you a whole lot about like how the world works in a different way. And so I think it's been a beautiful experience for me as a teacher to be able to see all sides of it and bring it all together for all kids, no matter where you come from.
Yeah, it's super cool because you see like, the difference between like perspectives that are based on resilience and perspectives that are based on access. And it's, I think people that end up like, if you can come from one side and clash with someone on the other side in a positive way, where you can learn from each other, like, and you mix both within yourself, you're gonna be a beast.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And what are a few tips you would give to aspiring educators?
I would say definitely network. I think that's important because I think at times we think there's only one way to get through a door, but there are so many different people that you can learn from and different experiences that you can take part of that will really shape your perspective and help you to be a better teacher. The teaching, I mean, like, you go to school to be a teacher, you may go for your master's degree, but a lot of what you learn in those classes is theory.
True.
And so you really don't know what it is until you get into the practice of it, right? So you need to network and like find people who can get you through those doors, the appropriate doors, so that you can get that practice, the appropriate practice. I think, you know, now teachers are burning out so quickly, and there's a lot of different reasons why that's happening. But I also think that a lot of teachers weren't properly prepared for the practice piece. It's just like, you can tell me everything you want about like phonics and this and that, great. But do you know how to build relationships with kids in the classroom?
True.
Do you know how to determine when a child needs a break, right? Like, maybe today's not the day that you introduce a new concept to that child because they might be going through something. Can you read the room? There's a lot of other things that go into teaching, and it's not just about the like, you know,
this schooling.
Right? It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's dealing with people, and just in general, like me working like on a public speaking, life coaching side. I know exactly what you mean, because people aren't things. Like, people are just, there's so many variables that come with every person, and like you said, you don't know what this kid's going through. They might be going through it at home, so they won't be able to take this concept well, and they won't do well in tests, and they're just going to be more stressed, and it's and you know, it's not going to reflect well with how they behave in the class. And you know, for the most part, like as far as burnout goes, what would you say is kind of a good way to avoid burnout as a teacher?
Hard. That really is a hard question, especially now, like with the pandemic and all the pressure put on educators. Like we are doing everything, you know? So that's a really hard question, but for me, it does fall back to that self-care piece. And, you know, I mean, I've done therapy for a number of years, and the biggest thing I learned about therapy is that self-care is not just something that you do when you leave your classroom or when you get home or on a weekend. It's something you can actively do in every moment. So for me, I have my little ritual. Like, I have my Bath and Body Works stress relief lotion on my desk, right? And every morning I put on my lotion. The kids know I will be putting on my lotion, and I smell it, and it makes me feel good. And it's having different things like within like a toolkit for yourself, right? Nice. Where that's what works for me, where it helps me to deal with what I can control in the moment, right? Because there are lots of things you can't control, but you have to focus on like what in this moment, regardless of the fact that this child might be giving me a hard time and this administrator wants this from me, what can I control? I think another thing is just advocacy, right? Like continuing to advocate for yourself. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that the issue will be solved in that moment, but it also should make you feel good that you use your voice to advocate for yourself or your students. And just, you know, I was talking to my best friend about this today, seeking those moments of joy. I think a lot of times we as humans can just look at everything that's going wrong. True. Right? And we get stuck on that. Like, oh, like we're missing all these supplies and all these different things. And then that energy pours into everything you do.
That's true.
Right? But I'm trying to be better about like, okay, what brings me joy in this moment? What brings me joy is that this student in this moment finally figured out how this math problem works. And he's smiling because he feels confident in himself. So I'm gonna focus on that moment, and everything else right now doesn't matter to me because I need to just focus on his joy. And how do I like package that and save it for later? And that can always be something I refer back to. That's a good way to look at it.
I think it's just with before the pandemic, like teachers were burning out, and a lot of it was because the whole stigma behind, you're one person managing like 30 different kids, and there's 30 personalities that are all developing, and then you have to do this 5 days a week. Then you have to go home and like go over like homework assignments, and then you have to speak with them individually, like you got to work on this, or you're doing great with this, and then like you got to keep that process going on and going on. Then also you have to have a life outside of the school, and then on top of that, you're dealing with like the school board and whatever's coming down from them. Yeah. So it's
a lot.
And then it's like there's a layer that I think should definitely be addressed on a financial end, because it's just like I don't understand how like the pay scale is set up, but like it's nuts. Like teachers should definitely be compensated well, because you're basically the people that are like developing the next generation, and that's how it's always been. So I think it's an undervalued field of work for the most part. I feel like the amount of stress that comes with it. Yeah. But it's nice to see that you've kind of like figured out a way to just thrive in it with like self-assessment, because I think from what you said, you're like, I had to figure out what works for me, so I don't burn out. And like it takes a lot of like self-assessment to understand like this is what works for me. Maybe the lotion doesn't work for somebody else. Maybe they need to have like some chill hop playing in the background, or they need to have a plan or something.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Like, so whatever works for you. If you're an aspiring educator, know yourself before you go into a classroom, because those kids are definitely going to reflect whatever energy is coming off of you. Because we're all in a classroom. When you went to a classroom, you had a teacher that was in a great mood. Even if you've had like this third or fourth period and like the teachers you had before were kind of bland or kind of like full of attitude, you look forward to going to so-and-so's classroom. And like it like that attitude makes kids want to go to school. So I think a lot of schools I went to, like there was always that one teacher that had that great energy. So
yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm happy-go-lucky all the time. Like I'm a mellow person, so that helps, right? Yeah. But the thing is, it's also remembering why you do the work. But it's also understanding your limits too. I'll say that, boundaries. Boundaries, it's the word of the year for me, boundaries. Yeah. Because especially as a young educator getting into it, like you really think you can do it all, right? And you're really like, your intention is great, right? Jump in, do it all, everything. But like, if you're not establishing boundaries, like what you need for your self-care, advocating for yourself, that can really make the burnout worse. And like you said, financially, then you start thinking about like, oh my gosh, I don't even make money like in a year. Like spending my own money for things, and all of that plays a role.
It's nuts.
So you just have to like be in tune with yourself, and I feel like that helps. Yeah,
I think we're human. It's you can't really avoid being frustrated at things that come at you. So yeah, definitely finding ways to instill self-care for sure.
For sure.
Yep. So what does Black History Month mean to you?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's just a month to celebrate who we are. But like, I feel like that celebration is really all year long. It's just for other people to kind of like pay a little more attention. But like, we're celebrating our Blackness.
I mean, I can't. Every day. February is every day for me.
Every day. So yeah.
Yeah. Even on leap years, 366. So who do you consider to be some of your personal heroes?
Oh, that's good. Personal heroes. So I like to take a little bit from everybody. Like I'm big on just like studying a whole bunch of people. But like as soon as you said that, I thought about Michelle Obama. Like first of all, she's Auntie Michelle. Like she's just right. Like, but she's just such a regal woman who like it just stands in her truth and who she is. Like, like obviously there's the frustration of like being the president's wife and people just having their opinions and saying all sorts of things, but she handles it with such grace. Yeah. And I really admire that. Yeah, so she definitely is someone who I look up to.
And who else do you throw in there?
Ooh, who am I throwing in? So I like old school stuff. Like I like
I jump into it. I go back too. Like one of mine is Mansa Musa.
Okay.
Like hundreds of years back. Like because I I like to look into like inception of things. Like, so what was it like 400 years ago? Who was a major figure? Who was a major figure 1,000 years ago?
Right.
So like a lot of people, whenever they hear Black History Month, they think of just figures from civil rights era or
Right.
like, you know, current folks.
It's more than that.
But it's like blackness is just so vast.
Absolutely.
You gotta study it. You really gotta study it.
To study some of the people we don't typically hear about too much. So like I love Josephine Baker. You know, Madam C.J. Walker, like even though people will know that she has something to do with hair care, but like really study like who these people were. And then what I love as a teacher is the Children's March, like the kids who were part of the Children's March. Like I love that because we don't often talk enough about children who participated in the civil rights movement.
No.
And
definitely.
I, as a teacher, love to like use that as a talking point, just because I want students, especially our brown and Black students, to know that they can make a difference.
Oh yeah.
You know, like they were lots of kids who were like deciding to, don't do this kids, walk out of school. Walk out of school, get arrested on a, you know, be put on school buses to get brought to like, you know, the jailhouse and still make a difference, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't right. And like, it just wasn't right back then. And like you're saying, a lot of folks, a lot of figures from like the 70s and like 80s, Black Panthers and all that, they were kids.
They were
like,
kids.
I mean, like teenagers, early 20s, and then nowadays, you know, just I mean, generally, it's not a mature age, but you could tell they were well studied, they were well spoken, like, you know, they were 20, 21, like the Fred Hammonds and all that, but they mindset wise, they're like, this is my purpose. I'm just gonna live it out, and like it's dope to see because every generation has those people that are just like well beyond their years in terms of maturity and knowledge, and it's great to see them flourish and make their mark on history. Right. Yeah. For sure.
And so I like love just like the people who are typically, I don't know if I want to call them the underdogs, but people that you don't typically hear about. And even in our own like Haitian history, like I love learning about all these new figures, like especially the women. Because like we really don't talk about the women who made a difference, right? Like within that culture, within our culture. So I love, like, I'm sorry if I butcher the name, Ana Kuana. She's like, I like love her story, like love it. You know?
There's so much history, especially on the like with women, they don't get a lot of credit, and it's nice to see. 'Cause I think we're at a time now where women are kind of at the forefront in terms of like spotlight, like whether they be actresses, politicians, musicians. Like it's a. I think we're gonna look back at it 50 years from now and say, hey, we went from having like a Black first lady to a Black vice president that was also a woman, and there were so many other like women around the last 20 years that have just made their mark and inspired, you know, generations of women, of girls to, like you said, like if she can do it and she can have the discipline to do it, like I can definitely be the best version of myself. Because of course, like said before, it's based on access and resiliency. But if you, like, I think Michelle Obama is a great example of that. She had the access, but she also had the resilience, like to just be who she is. And now, like, I'm kind of glad she's getting like her flowers. Absolutely. You know, via movies, via books, and just acknowledgement. Because, you know, it's funny. I feel like she's been treated better since she's been out the White House. Absolutely. Since, like, it's nuts. Like that first year she was in, they were calling all types of names. They were questioning her gender and all this stuff. I'm just like, everything under the sun that they would never do to another first lady. Never. And that's my thing, like to come out of that and be the woman that she is today. I'm like, that takes a level of strength. Because we only hear bits and pieces, right? True. But like this is her lived experience, like having to hear the things that people say, read things about yourself. Like I can't even imagine what that's like. And then to go through that and, you know, be in her position, have to keep a lot of things very private. So even how she feels, right? Like you still have to walk into a room with people who are ready to disrespect you and be who you are, like in the position that you're in. Like that is that strength. Yeah, she's got to be political. Like I know myself, I'm a blunt person. You know, if I feel disrespected, I don't know. I might not be able to keep it in for 8 years or longer.
Eight
so
years.
yeah, that's a long time. But I
That is a
mean,
long time.
she made the best of it. She definitely set the tone for the most part. I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, she's inspiring for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thanks again for coming, Jackie.
Of course.
So how can anyone looking to get in touch with you, like that wants to reach out with more questions on what it's like to be an educator? How can they reach you?
Sure. You can email me at jbrice, BRICE 513 @gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Just chat about the profession. And
Nice.
I want to thank you guys at Harley M Photography for having me here. This was awesome.
Well, we appreciate you coming for sure. It was a great conversation, and anyone looking to reach out to Jackie, if you're an aspiring educator or if you are an educator looking to network, feel free to reach out. She's great to talk to, as you can see. So, well, thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.